My son-in-law put both hands on my chest and shoved me backward into the doorframe of my own workshop. So hard, I felt something give deep in my right shoulder, and I slid down to the concrete floor while he stood over me, breathing like he'd just done something that required courage. The next morning, I loaded a wooden toolbox into the back of my truck and drove 22 minutes to his house. He saw me coming up the walk and grinned the way a man grins when he's already spent the money in his head. "Knew you'd come around, Lyle," he said. Then he opened the lid. "Before we go any further, please subscribe to the channel and drop me a comment telling me what state you're watching from." I genuinely read every single one. I spent 31 years teaching woodshop at Hardin County High School in Kenton, Ohio. That's not something most people say expecting you to be impressed, and I'm not asking you to be. What it means, practically, is that I spent 31 years teaching 16-year-olds that a thing built wrong will fail at the worst possible moment, that there are no shortcuts in a mortise joint, that the difference between a piece of furniture that lasts 40 years and one that falls apart in 4 is patience you can't fake. My wife Gloria used to say, "I talk to wood the way other men talk to their dogs, low and steady, and like I expected it to understand me." She said it like a compliment. She meant it as one. Gloria passed 21 months ago. Coronary artery disease. She'd had a warning episode 2 years before that, a cardiac event her cardiologist described as a significant precursor, and she'd come through it and we'd both believed the hard part was behind us. It wasn't. She went on a Tuesday morning in March while the coffee was still brewing, and the radio was on in the kitchen, and the cat was asleep on the mat by the back door, the way everything ordinary keeps being ordinary, right up until it isn't. She was 64 years old, and she had been making a list of things to see in Gatlinburg for our 43rd anniversary. Our daughter Wren was 37 when her mother died. She'd been married to Rex Dunmore for 4 years. Rex was the kind of man who introduced himself by profession, and then revised it every 6 months: commercial real estate consultant, investment portfolio advisor, property acquisition specialist. I'm from a small town in Ohio, and I know what those titles mean, which is that a man who needs 5 words to describe what he does for a living is usually working very hard to do very little. But Wren loved him, and Gloria believed in letting our daughter make her own life, and so I kept my opinions in the workshop where they belonged and smiled at the holiday table. Rex had borrowed money from us twice before Gloria got sick. $8,000 the first time, a land deal outside Columbus that was going to double in 18 months, minimum. $5,000 the second time, a short-term bridge loan on a commercial lease he needed to secure. The land deal paid nothing. The bridge loan was never discussed again. Gloria made excuses for both, said Rex just needed time to find his footing, and I let it go because Gloria asked me to, and because I loved her considerably more than I loved being right. After she died, Rex started calling more. Not to ask how I was holding up, not to check on Wren, to talk about opportunities. A storage facility near Lima, a strip mall in Findlay, a mixed-use development outside Toledo that was going to change everything. Each call ended the same way, a number mentioned like an afterthought. 30,000, 40,000, just to get the thing moving. He'd pay it back out of the returns. I told him each time that Gloria's life insurance was sitting in savings, and it was staying there. He'd agree very reasonably and call again in 6 weeks. The day everything broke was a Saturday in November. There'd been a hard frost overnight, and I could feel the cold in the concrete through my boots. I was working on a toy chest, tongue and groove pine, simple mortise joints, for my neighbor's granddaughter who was turning 3 at Christmas. The radio was on low. I heard his truck before I heard anything else. Rex didn't knock on the front door. He walked around the side of the house the way he'd seen me do a dozen times and let himself into the workshop. He was wearing a Carhartt jacket and carrying a manila folder, and that folder told me this wasn't a visit. "Dad," he said. He'd started calling me that sometime in the 2nd year of the marriage. I'd never corrected it, which I've since thought about. "Rex, what brings you out?" He set the folder on my workbench without asking and opened it. Inside were building renderings, financial projections, a lot of numbers clearly arranged to impress someone who didn't look too closely. "The Millbrook property," he said. "I've mentioned it. You've mentioned several things. This one is real. The seller's ready to move, and I've got buyers circling. I just need 35 to hold it while the financing clears. I looked at the papers. Then I looked at him. Rex, you still owe me 13,000 from the previous two. His jaw worked sideways. That gets paid back out of the returns on this deal. That's the point of the deal. The point of paying a debt is using a future debt's returns to cover it. It's not the same situation. He had a particular flatness in his voice when he decided not to be redirected. Gloria understood how these things work. He said her name. He did that deliberately, dropped it in like a citation, like her absence was something he could quote. I felt something cold go through me, and then I felt something else. Gloria isn't here to speak for herself, I said, so I'll speak for me. No. What happened next happened faster than I could organize it. Both hands grabbed the front of my jacket and I was walking backward before I understood. I was moving, 3 steps across the concrete, and then the door frame. The old pine one between the workshop and the storage room, wood I'd milled and hung myself in 1998, came up hard against my right shoulder, and something gave way in there with a sound I felt more than heard. My feet lost the floor, and I went down. He stood over me. His breathing was elevated. He looked almost as surprised as I was, like he'd crossed a line he hadn't drawn in advance, and was now standing on the other side of it trying to decide what that meant. Think about it, he said, quiet and flat. 35,000. I need an answer by Wednesday. He picked his folder up and walked out. I heard the truck. I heard it leave. I sat on the concrete floor of my workshop for a few minutes and listened to the wind move through the bare oak trees along the fence. My right arm wasn't cooperating. When I tried to lift it, the pain went up into my neck and across my chest, and I stopped. Wren had been in the house. She came around the side at a run and found me and went to pieces the way you go to pieces when something you've been afraid of finally happens. Dad. I'm okay. Let me call. Wren, I got her hand with my left. Listen to me. Not yet. Help me up. She got me to the kitchen and into the chair by the window. She was crying in the quiet, controlled way of a person who has learned to cry quietly, and I noticed that, and I held it. How long has he been doing this? I said. She looked at the table. Doing what? Don't. She was quiet for almost a full minute. The refrigerator hummed. The cat came in from somewhere and sat under the table. The first time was after the miscarriage, she said finally. We'd been trying. When it didn't work, he came home from a deal that had fallen through and I said the wrong thing and he shoved me into the bathroom door. She paused. He apologized for 2 weeks. I believed him. I kept my hand on hers. It's only bad when things go wrong, she said. With money. With deals. I can usually tell by the way he closes the car door when he comes home. I didn't speak for a while. I looked out the window at the frosted grass and thought about the right order in which to do things. I need you to go back there tonight, I said. She looked at me, frightened. Dad. I need one night for you to act like nothing happened. I need him thinking I'm going to fold. Can you do that? I tightened my hand on hers. Pack a small bag while he's sleeping. Put it where he won't see it. Tomorrow afternoon, you leave and you come here. She nodded slowly. One more thing. I kept my voice even. Has Rex ever said anything about your mother's insurance money? About her accounts while she was sick? Anything that seemed off? Something moved across her face, not surprise exactly, more like recognition. Tell me tomorrow, she said, when I come back. I sent her home, and then I called a woman named Donna Hartzell. Donna and I had gone to Hardin County High School together 46 years ago. She'd become a family law attorney in Columbus, 30 years in practice, and I'd helped her younger brother build a workbench in my shop class back in 1994. We weren't close, but I knew she was good. She picked up on the third ring. Donna, I said, it's Lyle Gruber. I need a lawyer. A pause. Lord Lyle, what happened? I need to document an injury tonight. I need to talk about assault charges, and I may need to talk about a divorce proceeding for my daughter. She didn't miss a beat. Don't shower. Don't change your shirt. I'm texting you a hospital in Lima right now. Go to the ER. Tell them you were assaulted. Tell them everything exactly as it happened. I'm calling ahead. They'll document it the right way. I'll meet you there. She was in the waiting room when I arrived, reading glasses on, legal pad in hand. and she stayed until the x-rays confirmed a partially displaced clavicle and contusions along my upper back consistent with impact against a fixed hard edge. A doctor named Singh wrote her notes with language that Donna quietly helped specify, and we had photographs, and I gave a recorded statement that didn't feel like enough and turned out to be exactly enough. Donna drove me home at 1 a.m. On the way she asked me what I actually wanted, not what I was angry about, what I wanted. I told her, Ren out safely, Rex unable to do this again, and an answer about Gloria's money because something had never added up. She asked me to explain. I told her about the insurance payout. $240,000 policy, $60,000 short when the check arrived, the company citing an amendment to the beneficiary designation that I had never signed. Donna didn't say anything for a long moment. Do you still have Gloria's hospital paperwork from her last 2 years? Box, in the closet. Don't touch it. I'm sending my associate Monday morning. His name was Perry, young, methodical, the kind of man who asked questions in a specific order and wrote the answers down before he moved to the next one. What he found in Gloria's paperwork was a durable medical power of attorney, executed 11 months before she died, at a routine cardiology follow-up. It granted Rex temporary authority over financial decisions if Gloria was deemed incapacitated. It was notarized. It looked entirely legitimate. But the notary stamp came from a UPS store in Columbus that I couldn't place. And the witnessing signature belonged to someone named D. Wexler, whom Perry could not find in any licensing database, because D. Wexler's Ohio Notary Commission had been expired for 14 months when the document was signed. Rex had been at that appointment. Gloria had still been mobile, still mostly herself. She'd trusted him, because Ren trusted him, and because Gloria trusted her daughter's judgment the way mothers do when the alternative is too painful to consider. The $60,000 had moved from a joint savings account Gloria and I held into a business LLC in Rex's name, documented as a loan repayment. The LLC had existed 8 months. It dissolved 3 weeks after the transfer. I sat with that in my kitchen for a long time. Ren came back the next afternoon with 2 bags and her tabby cat in a carrier. She stood in my kitchen doorway with the look of someone who has made a decision she's been putting off for longer than she'll admit. And then she told me what she knew about her mother. In the last month of Gloria's life, Rex had told her something. He'd told her, more than once, that I had agreed to let him help manage the insurance money after she passed. That I'd told him it was better for the family if a younger set of hands managed it. That I'd said it would honor what Gloria had always wanted for Ren. He'd told her I'd given my blessing. He'd told her it was settled. Gloria had believed him. She'd mentioned it to Ren once, said she was glad I'd made my peace with Rex. Ren had assumed it was something her parents had worked out privately. She hadn't asked. I had never had that conversation. I had never agreed to anything of the kind. He had sat next to my wife while she was dying and told her that her husband had given his blessing to a theft that hadn't happened yet. And she had gone believing it. I put my head in my hands at the kitchen table, and Ren put her arms around me, and I let her, and the cat sat in the third chair and watched us with the untroubled patience of an animal that doesn't track time. After a while I said, "There's something I need to understand first, whether he's done this to anyone else." Perry spent the following 10 days making calls. He found a retired couple in Bowling Green, married 40 years, who had given Rex $22,000 for a storage facility that never broke ground. He found a former business partner who was owed money from a dissolved LLC and had been receiving calls that gradually stopped, and he found a man named Felix Odom. Felix was 69 years old. He'd worked 28 years as a facilities manager for a school district in Hancock County, retired in 2019, living on his pension and Social Security in the same ranch house he'd bought in 1991. His wife had died 2 years before Gloria. He'd met Rex at a church pancake breakfast. Rex's mother attended the same congregation, and over 3 months Rex had bought him coffee, driven him to a doctor's appointment once, listened patiently to him talk about his late wife. Built something that felt like friendship. Felix had given him $31,000, his entire non-retirement savings. Money he'd put aside over 15 years to someday restore the lake cabin in northern Michigan, where he and his wife had spent their honeymoon, where he planned to live out the part of his life that still felt like it had something good in it. The money had gone into Rex's LLC. The LLC had dissolved. Felix had never been repaid $1. When Perry called, Felix was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I told myself it was my own fault, that I was just an old fool who got taken." I drove to Findlay on a Thursday. Felix made coffee from a tin of Folgers, and we sat at his kitchen table, and I told him what I knew about how Rex operated, the pattern of it, the friendship that was a tool rather than a feeling. "Felix," I said, "would you be willing to come forward, to testify about what happened to you?" He looked at his coffee. "My kids would find out. They'd find out their father was targeted with patience and precision by a man who spent 3 months earning the right to steal from him. That's different from being foolish. They might not see it that way. My daughter spent 4 years making excuses for the man who was hurting her," I said. "She's in my house right now. She doesn't see herself as foolish. She sees herself as someone who was in a situation and couldn't see the way out. Your kids will see you the same way." Felix set down the coffee cup. His hands were steady, his eyes weren't. "All right," he said. "Tell me what I need to do." I had the toolbox ready on a Wednesday morning. Donna had filed the criminal complaint through the county sheriff's office Monday. The restraining order had been granted Tuesday morning. Wren had signed the separation petition the night before at my kitchen table, her handwriting clear and deliberate by the time she got to the signature line. I called Rex at 7 a.m. and told him I'd been thinking about the Millbrook property and wanted to bring him something before I made any decisions. He sounded like he'd been waiting for that call. The toolbox had sat on my workbench since 1987. I'd built it myself the summer I started teaching, the summer I was 26, and thought that having good tools in a well-made box was the beginning of a life properly organized. Cherry wood, fitted brass hinges, a mortise lock I'd cut myself. It had held drill bits and chisels and measuring squares and calipers for 38 years. Gloria used to say it was the most honest thing I'd ever made, because it only claimed to be what it was. I strapped it in the truck bed. I drove the 22 minutes at the speed limit with my right arm in the sling, left hand on the wheel, the morning gray and cold over the fields. Rex was at the door before I reached the porch. He'd showered and combed his hair and put on a collared shirt. He looked at the toolbox in my left hand, and something flicked in his face before he covered it with a smile. "Dad, come on in. I won't be long." I set the box on his kitchen island. He came around to stand beside it, ran a hand across the cherry wood surface the way people touch things they're considering claiming. "Beautiful piece," he said. "My wife always said so. Open it." He flipped the brass latches. He lifted the lid. The inside was lined with cedar, the way I'd built it. But there were no tools that morning. There was a sealed manila envelope on top, the return address of the Hardin County Sheriff's Office in the upper left corner. Underneath it, a folder with Donna Hartzell's firm name embossed on the tab. Underneath that, a smaller envelope with a court date visible through the plastic window. Rex's hand stopped. The color in his face changed. "First one is the criminal complaint," I said. "Assault with bodily injury. The county DA added a fraud count after Perry found the power of attorney and the notary records." He opened his mouth. "Second is from Donna Hartzell's office. Wren's separation filing. She signed it last night. It was accepted first thing this morning." Wren didn't. He looked up. "She wouldn't." "She did. Third envelope has the restraining order. It went into effect the moment you took the box from me. Your own doorbell camera recorded the service." I watched him glance at the small black dome above his garage entry, the camera he'd installed himself 2 summers ago. "There's one more thing. Bottom of the box." He was very still. Then slowly he reached in and took out the last item, a single folded page. He opened it. It was a printed record from the Ohio Secretary of State's office showing the date Rex's LLC was formed and dissolved, alongside a banking record showing the transfer amount and date. Below that, a state licensing board printout. D. Wexler, Notary Public. Commission expired 14 months before the date on Gloria's power of attorney. The notarization was invalid. The document was fraudulent. The $60,000 had been obtained by fraud under a fraudulent power of attorney, while my wife was sick and trusting and running out of time. Rex set the paper down on the island with great care, the way you set something down when your hands have become unreliable. You can put your hands on me again, I said. Right here, right now, on your own camera. Or you can sit down and read every page in that folder. I picked up my keys. Your choice. He didn't move. He didn't speak. I walked out his front door, down the porch steps, to my truck. I got 3 blocks before my hands started shaking badly enough that I pulled into the parking lot of a Walgreens and sat there until they steadied. Then I drove home. The trial was a Tuesday in January, Hardin County Common Pleas Court, 3rd floor. The hallway smelled like industrial carpet and radiator heat. Wren sat beside me on a wooden bench with her shoulder against mine. Rex sat across the hall with his attorney, not looking at anyone. Inside, the prosecutor, a woman named Anita who had the quiet confidence of someone who had done this many times and found it worth continuing to do, walked the jury through the case the way a good carpenter walks a joint. Methodically, no gaps. My shoulder injury. The photographs from the ER, Dr. Singh's specific documentation. The doorbell footage from Rex's own camera, showing me hand him the toolbox, showing him open it, showing him take one step toward me before he stopped himself. Wren testified. She was steady. She looked at the prosecutor when she answered, not at Rex. When the prosecutor asked if Rex had ever struck her, she paused, and then she said yes. And she said when the farthest time was, and the defense attorney tried to establish it as a pattern of mutual conflict, and she looked at him with the calm patience of someone who has run out of fear, and said, he put both hands on me. I have photographs of what that looked like. She showed them. She did not cry until the very end, and when she cried it was brief, and she stopped on her own. Felix testified. He arrived in a pressed shirt and sat in the witness chair, with his hands folded on the rail, and when Rex's attorney tried to frame the $31,000 as a voluntary bad investment. Felix sat up a little straighter and said, I managed facilities budgets for 15 school buildings for 28 years. I understand numbers. What I didn't understand was that someone who spent 3 months acting like my friend was doing it specifically to steal from me. He said it without a tremor. Rex insisted on testifying. His attorney was against it. I could tell from the body language. But Rex had spent years charming his way through situations, and he'd decided the witness stand was just another situation. It wasn't. He contradicted himself twice inside the first 10 minutes. The third time, when the prosecutor asked about the power of attorney and the notary record, he half rose from the chair and pointed across the courtroom and said, This man has had it out for me since the day I married his daughter. The judge brought the gavel down. Rex sat. The jury was out 4 hours. Guilty on the assault charge. Guilty on the fraud charge related to Gloria's insurance. Guilty on a theft by deception count related to Felix's savings. 16 months county, restitution to Felix, to the Bowling Green couple, and to me. A protective order for Wren extending 2 years past the sentence. When the bailiff moved to cuff him, Rex looked across the room at me. I held his gaze the way I'd hold a piece of work steady, without force, without hurry, until he looked away first. Wren and I drove back to Kenton in the January gray. She made soup for dinner because it was what Gloria made in cold weather. Chicken and wild rice. From a handwritten recipe card that's been on our refrigerator since 1989, Gloria's handwriting in blue ballpoint pen that's starting to fade at the edges. We ate at the kitchen table with the cat in the third chair. After dinner, Wren said, Daddy, do you think Mom knew about what he really was? I thought about that honestly. I think she knew something wasn't quite right, I said, but she loved you more than she needed to be right about him. That was your mother. Wren looked at the table. She would have hated that he used her that way, while she was sick. Yes, I said, she would have. We sat for a while. The furnace kicked on. The house made its sounds. After a while, Wren said, Will you show me what you're working on in the shop? We went out. I turned on the overhead light. The toy chest was still there on the bench where I'd left it, dry fit and waiting. Pine sides not yet glued, joints tight without a nail. I walked her through how the tongue and groove worked, how the corner blocks transferred load, why the grain orientation mattered. She listened the way her mother used to listen, with her head tilted slightly and her eyes on the wood. It's smooth, she said, running a finger along the joint. It'll be smoother, I said. I gave her a piece of 220 grit, and she sanded while I held the panel steady with my good hand. The shop smelled like pine and linseed oil and cold concrete. An owl called once from the oaks along the fence, and then the night was quiet. I don't know that I'd call any of it justice, exactly. Justice would be Gloria still at the kitchen table. Justice would be Felix's lake cabin, bought with money that was never stolen. What we got was the closest the law comes. Not the same thing, but not nothing. Felix got most of his savings back through restitution. The Bowling Green couple got a court order. Wren got out. I finished the toy chest that spring and delivered it before Easter. Pine and brass hinges and a small carved flower on the lid that Wren suggested when she watched me work on it one evening. The neighbor's granddaughter is 3 years old, and on the first day she put her stuffed rabbit inside and closed the lid and said it was the rabbit's house. That's good enough for me. If this story meant something to you, please give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And leave me a comment. What would you have put in that toolbox? I read everyone. I'll see you in the next story.